Hello friends, today's lecture is on Hindi Cinema and Bimal Roy. Today's lecture is the symbolic expression, and as an interpreter we have Manisha Sharma with us. As all of us are aware that the contribution of Bimal Roy to the Hindi cinema has been immense. The kind of films which he has made over the years, they have been remarkable not only from the aesthetic point of view, but the socio-economic and political perspectives which could be found in the films which have been made by Bimal Roy. They have been very, very relevant from the Indian society's point of view. If we see that how his initial films like Udair Pathe, which was also a Bengali film which was also made in Hindi with the title of Hamrahi, and Do Biga Zameen, which he made in 1953, then Sujata, which was made in 1959. All these films which were made by Bimal Roy, they were trying to connect with the kind of changing times after independence and his pre-independence cinema, Hamrahi, in which we find that how a nationalist hero, he is trying to reform the society in the sense that he wanted equality for everyone. Apart from that, we see the kind of techniques which were being introduced by Bimal Roy in his films. They were refreshing in that sense, and it has also been argued by some of the film theoreticians that how Bimal Roy was also influenced by neorealist cinema, and Do Biga Zameen is also reflective of DC Carr's Bicycle Thieves. So in the framework of understanding Bimal Roy and his cinema, it is also very, very important to understand the period which began after the independence of India, and how India encountered a lot of problems just after independence: poverty, unemployment, the position of women in the society. All these were the kind of concerns which were very relevant in those times, and Bimal Roy's cinema tries to address those problems from his own point of view. And many a times we find that the way Bimal Roy has portrayed women in his film, it is far more heroic in nature, and the way heroines or the female protagonists they have been portrayed in Bimal Roy's cinema, it conveys a very positive kind of an image of the women, those who are portrayed in the films. In the framework of the references, one can refer to Rinki Bhattacharya's Bimal Roy, A Man of Silence, Feroz Rangoonwala, Bimal Roy, A Monograph, Rinki Roy Bhattacharya edited Bimal Roy, A Man Who Spoke in Pictures, B.D. Garg, So Many Cinemas. So these are some of the readings which one can refer to when one is talking about Bimal Roy and the films which were made by him. We see that how cinema is also reflective of culture, and we find that a number of cultural practices which are there in the society, they also get reflected in cinema. And it has also been seen in the framework that how cinema largely is a documented source, and how film scholars and film theoreticians and historians, they also have argued in the recent times that how cinema can also be a source of historical inquiry. So apart from understanding cinema only as a means of entertainment, one should look at cinema in a framework where it can also provide a lot of information about the socio-economic, political, cultural conditions of those times, and how the moving images or cinema, they are in a way connected to the society at large. And we also see that how at the same time it is also a means for education as well as communication. And when cinema is reflecting culture, then we also see that a number of issues concerning with fashion, identity, all of them, they are also concerned with cinema. When we see that how the kind of films which were made by Bimal Roy, as he himself was a cinematographer earlier and later he turned into a director. So Bimal Roy had that kind of an eye where he could visualize the kind of frames which were to be seen in his films, and how he was also connected with IPTA, which was the Indian People's Theatres Association. And we find that some of his films, they were in a way inspired by the Italian neorealist cinema. and how when you see his films, they were comparatively far more realistic in nature, and Bimal Roy wanted to in a way convey that cinema was more meaningful in nature. So the kind of purpose which was there in terms of making the movies and some kind of a meaning which could be found in those films could be seen in the cinema of Bimal Roy. And he raised a number of concerns in his film. For example, when you see the kind of cinema which he made, for example, untouchabilities concerns were raised in Sujata, struggle of capital and labor in Hamrahi, or their Pathe as it was made in Bengali, the position of women in society in Bandhani, economic inequality, social oppression, these kinds of concerns, they were also being seen in the films like Do Bigha Zameen, as well as the issue of poverty as well. And then the concern regarding unemployment, which could be seen in the film Naukri. So we find that Bimal Roy's concerns were varied, but at the same time they were also immediate in nature, that India just after becoming an independent nation, it was grappling with a number of issues, and these issues, they were very important, and at the same time they had to be handled by the government in a way that India comes out of all these kinds of issues, comes out of that situation, and some kind of a positive change could be brought about in the society. So we find that all these films, they were trying to address the kind of concerns which were important to India after the independence of India. And when we try to see the kind of work which was done by Bimal Roy, we see that how a number of awards, they were being given to him, Filmfare Awards, 11 in number, then 2 National Film Awards were given to him. Apart from the international prize of the Cannes Film Festival, and also the government honored him with a postage stamp bearing his face, which was released by the India Post to honor him in 2007. Apart from that, a number of awards, they were also being given to him, and how Madhumati won 9 Filmfare Awards in 1958, a record which was held for nearly 37 years. So we find that a number of films in which were made by Bimal Roy, they were also very popular, and the popularity of the awards could be seen in the perspective that how all these films they were being awarded at different levels. So we just cannot say that awards were very imperative for the kind of cinema which he made, but award in a way recognized in that sense that how the kind of cinema or the kind of treatment which he gave to the films which were made by him. And in this context, the contribution of Bimal Roy has been immense, and as I told you earlier, that when he began his career as a director in a Bengali film, and thereafter that film was also made in Hindi as well. And in this film called Udair Pathe, he dealt with the theme of the working class and its oppression by the capitalist class. And Rinki Bhattacharya's Bimal Roy, Man of Silence, talks about that how the protagonist challenges the capitalist with dignity and honor. So we find that how the concern of the the concern of the working class, and how the capitalist class was oppressing this working class, could be seen in this particular film. And what the protagonist wanted was that how he should be treated with dignity and honor by the groups, especially the capitalist group. And we also see that the protagonist in this particular film was liberal and democratic in his approach as well as attitude, and this was also reflected in the entire film. And we also see that the sister of the capitalist group's head was in a way connected with the working class hero, and when both of them, they come together and they in a way decide to spend their lives with each other and to work for a similar cause, we find that these kinds of boundaries which were there with regard to the class system, they could become blur, and they also prove to be that some kind of an inspiration could be found for the people, those who want to remove these kinds of boundaries. And at the same time, we found that these kinds of films, they were actually shot on the locations, and they were in a way trying to use non-professional actors in the films, because such kind of a cinema which could be the meaningful cinema of those times. And this film ran for nearly a year at Chitra Cinema in Calcutta. And Nabendu Ghosh, he says that how Bimal Roy introduced the reality that is the main characteristic of his age, the conflict of the classes, the clash of the exploiter and the exploited, of the capitalist and the labor. So how film theoreticians like Nabendu Ghosh, who was also a practicing filmmaker, and how they also in a way talk about these kinds of concerns which were very, very important in those times, because we in a way realize that how there was a lot of inequality in the society, and the issue of haves and the have-nots was very, very relevant in that context, because some people they had best of the things, for in that context everything was available to them, and on the other hand there were people with whom nothing was available. These people were the have-nots. And in this particular film we also find that how Tagore's or Rabindranath Tagore's song Jan Gan Man, which later became the national anthem of India. So such kind of portrayals, such kind of films which were made at this point of time, they were dealing with important issues of that particular period, and they were also in a way nationalistic, in the sense that Jan Gan Man, which also became the national anthem of India, was also part of this particular film. And we find that how this film was later made into Hindi as well, and how the issues of caste, class and creed they were being reflected in the cinema. And we also find the idea of national fervor which was there at that point of time, because 1940s was a period when this film was made, and at the same time we also find that 1942 was a period when Quit India movement was launched, and how this period of Quit India movement and thereafter raised that kind of a concern that India had to become independent at all costs, and they did not want to align with any of the British forces, and how British forces they were to be forced so that India becomes independent. So this film reflects the kind of idealism which was there in the protagonist of the film, and how this film was made into Hindi with the title of Hamrahi. We also find that how the partition of India in a way had shaken the structure of the Indian society, and all the issues concerning hunger, unemployment, poverty, all of them they could be seen in the Indian society, and how Indians they were trying to cope with the dilemmas they were emanating from the demands of a new state. And these kinds of dilemmas they were in the context of the modern and the traditional values, that which kind of values were to be in a way followed. Industrialization and poverty they were another some of the important concerns, and democratic and authoritarian principles, whether India should go for all sorts of democratic options, or whether the authoritarian principles they should be followed in the society. And the concerns which were there with regard to the affluence and hunger could also be seen, that how people, those who are in the category of have-nots, they had a lot of frustration from they were not able to seek employment, and they felt that they were worthless at that point of time. And the concerns of the Indian nation in the context that how the government responded to such kind of issues, and the government focused on the economic development, and how the Planning Commission on 15th March 1950, with Nehru as the chairperson, was established. And in 1951 we find that how the first 5-year plan it was being launched at that point of time, and scholars like Bipin Chandra they have argued that the second 5-year plan it was based on the Nehru-Mahalanobis model, which aimed at the rapid development of heavy capital industries in India, chiefly in the public sector. So we find that the first 5-year plan focused on the agricultural sector, and on the other hand, the second 5-year plan focus was on the industries, and the Mahal Nobis model, it in a way wanted to focus on the capital goods industries. And how, because of the coming of the 5-year plans, how with the coming of the kind of planning which got involved during the 5-year plans, India could make some kind of a stride in the economic development of the country. We also find that the first international film festival, it could be seen in India in 1952, and a large number of foreign films, they were being exhibited at this point of time, and films like Bicycle Thieves of D. Sika, how they were seen by filmmakers like Bimal Roy. And the kind of film which he made as Do Biga Zameen in 1953, it was based on a story Rickshawala by Salil Chaudhary. And we find that how it was also a story where the impoverished peasants' passion to earn the sufficient money to retrieve his mortgaged land. So we find that these kinds of concerns, they could be seen in many households of India, and how the people, they got in a way exploited by the money lenders at that point of time, and how the kind of character which was played by Balraj Sahni, he in a way came to Calcutta and he started pulling the rickshaw on the streets of Calcutta, and he had this kind of a desire that he will be able to in a way earn that kind of a money by which he could get back his own land. And we find that how his family was in a way suffering a lot, they had a lot of hardships, and even when he comes to Calcutta, he is also living in a very precarious situation. He was living a life of penury and poverty, and we find that when this film was made, it was being shown that he did not go to the village to save his land, and it was also being discussed that two climaxes of this film, they were being shot. One of the climaxes was trying to convey a positive aspect where the male protagonist, who is a farmer, who has some kind of a land which was 2 acres of land in his own native village, and he is being shown as he is moving to the rising sun. And on the other hand, another climax was more pessimistic in nature. So we find that such kind of a cinema was also concerned with the realities of those times, and how it was also concerned with the idea of neorealism, and how neorealist films, they were also being made at that point of time. We also see that how this film was not only recognized at the national level, but it was also recognized at the international level as well, and it also received a number of awards at different stages. So how the contribution of Bimal Roy in that context has been very relevant from the Indian cinema's point of view. And apart from the films which we have already discussed, he made a number of other films as well, and these films, they were also dealing with the kind of themes which were quite relevant. And we also find that his later films, they were also in a way, for example, Sujata, for example, was dealing with untouchability, which we are going to discuss in the next lecture. And Biraj Bahu, for that matter, was again a wonderful classic film. Then Devdas, which was made by him in 1955. So before that also, we find that films with the title of Devdas was made by P.C. Barua in Bengali as well as Hindi. In the Hindi version, K.L. Sehgal played the protagonist role, and in Bengali version, P.C. Barua played that role. And the kind of treatment which was given by Bimal Roy to Devdas, and how Dilip Kumar played the role of Devdas in the version which was made by made by Bimal Roy. So these kinds of portrayals, they had been remarkable in terms of their presentations, and at the same time they also are trying to convey the important concerns of the society. All this we are going to discuss in our next lecture. Thank you very much.